Welcome to Notepad. I'm your host, Ibrahim Sani. As we try to navigate through this full measured lockdown that is currently being placed around the country, we try to understand a little bit better about some of the impacts that it has on our lives, particularly on how to keep fit. I myself, for one, have just been vaccinated, currently undergoing through some of the very weird side effects that is coming from these vaccinations. But at the same time, I still want to keep healthy. I still want to keep fit and of course try to monitor my own health at it. Right now, we've seen the announcement by Apple, for instance, where the ECG app is now being done in Malaysia on the Apple Watch 6. It can measure your blood oxygen level. It can actually take an AFib measurement on your wrist. And this device, of course, has been approved by the Malaysian Device Authority of the KKM, or Ministry of Health Malaysia. So let's try to unpack this story a little bit better. I have with me a surgeon from the IJN, Dr. Sani. Thanks for taking the time to speak with us.
Pleasure.
Dr. Sani, let's talk a little bit more about the situation right now in the country first, about the pandemic. We've seen how the numbers are creeping up, close to 10,000 cases per day. And of course, all this is still, in a way, I would like to argue it this way, that it's still retrospective compared to compared to a preventative method, which is to increase vaccination. The government is actually fighting on two fronts. And of course, we've seen a lot of reports where they want to increase vaccinations from about 70,000 daily doses per day to 150 doses per day. What would be some of the ideas that you have to share with us when it comes to Malaysia battling the pandemic right now?
Thanks, Ray. Morning, Assalamualaikum. I think we've never encountered such a pandemic before in the country, or for the matter, the whole world. It's been a big issue, and I think for a country like Malaysia, with our resources, it's really tough. First of all, it's put a tremendous strain on our healthcare services throughout the country, not just the KKM services, but also the private healthcare sector, including us in IJN. And I think that this pandemic has caused a big problem, not just in terms of managing it, but in terms of also managing the other healthcare problems that we have in the country. It's not the best time, I would say, to get, at least in our context, it's not the best time to get a heart attack in the country now because of the limited resources that we have in the country and also in IJN with the pandemic ongoing. And I think this is one of the main things that we are facing. And secondly, it's the vaccination. The vaccination, I really am not sure why people have a big issue with this. We see that certain states have got people not turning up for their vaccination. There's people who are anti-vaccine. Sadly, some are healthcare professionals, which I really don't understand. And some are making issues of various conspiracy theory related to the vaccination and also the COVID itself. To me, it's a tool of protecting yourself and your loved ones, and of course the whole country for that matter. Vaccination is something that is required, just like any other vaccination that we go through. I mean, it's something that will protect us. It will perhaps, inshallah, if you get the vaccination, and unfortunately, if you do get another COVID infection, it should not bring you up to the higher category. It should maybe perhaps just category 1 and 2, and that's what we've seen from the data anyway, from the medical data.
Yeah,
so vaccination is really important. I mean, I can't stress enough about how important it is just for us to get our economy back, our normal lifestyle back, and so on and so forth. And without vaccination, we can't. But the other big issue is, of course, the resources in terms of the vaccine itself. As what our minister has mentioned, he just mentioned that we can't get the vaccine. It was with great difficulty what we are told, and only now that it's coming in this month, inshallah. And once we get the stock of vaccine coming in, then we should be in a better position to have mass vaccination, and of course mobile vaccination that we've been talking about, and vaccination at GPs and the various clinics all around the country. That will make it much easier. But if you recall right about the vaccination, when it first came out, the Pfizer vaccine came out, it was a lot of difficulty in actually maintaining the cold chain from the temperatures that are required, and once it's transferred out from the center, bringing to our hospital, for example, maintaining the cold chain, so which means maintaining the effectiveness of those vaccines were important. And this is not something that can be done in any place or in any centers or across the country, because once you break the cold chain, then the vaccine itself will not be effective, and then then you start blaming that we got a poor vaccine and things like that. So understanding how the vaccination program works, understanding on the impact of the various types of vaccine is important. But all said and done, all the vaccines that, as far as I'm aware, that we are getting in this country so far is Pfizer, is Astra, and also Sinovac, are all effective. If you get any of those vaccines or you're called for any of these, just take it. Inshallah, it will do you good, rather than, I want this vaccine, that vaccine. Look, I mean, just take it. Just take it. Protect yourself and your family.
So, Doctor, some of the misconceptions about the vaccine itself is also quite troubling because, say, for instance, my own sister, who is a consultant in Kuala Lumpur Hospital, she has been contracted COVID for the second time, despite being vaccinated after the second dose of Pfizer. But of course, she is tested positive based on the swab. She's not displaying any symptoms. This is the whole idea. It's not trying to eradicate the whole possibility of you contracting vaccines.
That's right.
Right. But it's trying to minimize that whole impact in case you do get it or get it again. You touched on a lot of points just now. Let's talk a little bit more about the health systems per se. Now is not the best time to get heart attack. Doctor, I agree with you, but at the same time,
that's right.
There's never a good time to get a heart attack, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right. Of course, yes.
But now it's a bit worse than most. I understand what you're trying to get at. And it's not just that. Other elective procedures are also being postponed. My own mother, who is suffering from a bunch of comorbidities in Arau right now, in Kanga, in Perlis, she has not been able to meet up with her physicians for elective treatments because of the fact that all the health system is currently all hands on deck in managing the pandemic.
That's right.
Because of this, do you think that this whole notion of trying to keep yourself healthy ahead of you being sick is extremely crucial for us to understand this whole concept? I mean, let's not meet any doctor, for instance, as opposed to having to meet a doctor but can't because of elective procedures. Let's talk about the whole notion of how do we need to keep healthy, how do we need to keep a better heart, that kind of ideas.
Okay, fine. That's a great question. If you look at from risk factors, let's talk about risk factors. Because of the MCO now, and even from the first MCO, people have not been moving about too much, staying at home, eating like usual, putting on weight, and and things are not good that way from the health perspective. So what I'm trying to get at is that when you talk about health, there are two issues. One is unavoidable. One is avoidable. So when you talk about the unavoidable, right, we're talking about those who have got genetic factors, right? So for example, in their genes, they've got high risk of getting diabetes or heart problems and things like that. Second thing is the sex, whether they're male or female, especially for heart diseases. Males are more, they tend to get heart problems more than females. So those two factors are very important. So it's unavoidable. So if you have those two main factors, obviously, Ibrahim, you're a male, and if you have family history, you have got a higher risk as compared to, say, a female with no family history. So then you need to take care of your heart better as compared to them. The second component is the avoidable. So if you have, say, for example, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, uric acid problems, or kidney problems, and things on, then you have to make sure that you try to either minimize it or reduce the severity of those diseases, which means that, for example, diabetes, that one of the risk factors for COVID itself is if you have diabetes and you get COVID, doesn't bring a very good outcome. And if you've got complications from diabetes, like say kidney problems and hypertension, that's not going to bring a good outcome for the COVID, if you get COVID infection. So what I'm trying to get at is that maintaining or minimizing the risk factors that will attribute to you having a disease like heart disease especially is very important. So what happens is that if you're staying at home most of the time or working from home, you've got to discipline yourself by eating and making sure that you control your diet, because you tend to eat more, exercise less, obviously, because you can go out, and you have a higher risk of getting diabetes. Secondly, sometimes work from home can be quite stressful for various reasons, and this can attribute to causing high blood pressure. And if you can't manage this properly, then you will have a problem. So all in all, managing risk factors, managing your health is really important. But how you manage it is something which will differ from individuals. It all depends on their age, and what sort of health levels they are at the moment, and avoidance basically of avoidance of actually getting a disease that you shouldn't be getting. The easiest is of course diabetes and high blood pressure.
Yeah. Doctor, could you share with us some of the ideas in terms of the value of us buying some tracking devices like the one press button for monitoring blood pressure, the pulse oximeter, if I'm not mistaken, the name is, in terms of measuring oxygen levels.
Yeah.
That,
So okay, so basically, when you're trying to take care of health, right? So as I always explain to my patients, right, what will kill a person basically, right? So if basically it's usually it's either the heart or you get a massive stroke. Okay, those are the acute. I'm talking about acute situations, right? So when you're talking about the heart, okay, why would you die of a basically if you have coronary artery disease that causes heart attack, or if you've got rhythm issues, heart rhythm issues, okay, which means that the heartbeat or the way the heart dances in the body is not in a regular rhythm. So as a result of that, when it's not in a regular rhythm, it can cause a lot of problems to you. First of all, this irregular rhythm, we call it, can be many types. But the commonest type of irregular rhythms worldwide is atrial fibrillation, which means that the synchronization between the atrium of the heart and the ventricle of the heart is not there. As a result of that is irregular heart activities, and this can cause stroke in such a patient. So that's one. Second thing is, if you have a regular rhythm, what you want to make sure is that you don't have a very fast heart rate or a very low heart rate. And it would be nice if you have a wearable that's able to trigger this. If your heart rate is getting too low, because it can cause dizziness, you can have fainting spells if your heart rate is too low, or even if you have your heart rate too fast, which means your heart is beating too fast, this is not enough blood that is actually pumped out of the heart, and you can actually faint because of palpitation. So wearables should be able to detect, some wearables, not all, will be able to detect this situation. And with regards to the oxygen levels, the saturation level, that would be excellent for a certain subgroup of people who've got obstructive sleep apnea, or they've got chronic lung diseases, that this device are able to monitor or at least give them some early indication that their oxygen level is dropping. And if it drops, because they should be aware already what is their normal level, especially if they have these diseases. And if they notice that the trend is on a downward trend, then they should engage their doctors and talk to them about the situation, and perhaps go and see them, make appointment to see the doctors. So the wearables nowadays are fantastic. I mean, it's I encourage people to have it simply because it is, for example, the rhythm monitor, right? It's like having your own basically having your clinic at home, if you understand what I mean.
Doctor, I just want to understand a little bit more. First of all, is on these wearables, such as the Apple Watch 6, Series 6 with the ECG app. It can, as advertised, detect the atrial fibrillation. It's an ECG app. Everything can be monitored through your device. But what people don't understand is that this is a screening mechanism. It's not a diagnostic mechanism. But at the same time, it's important for us to be screened first so that you can have a meaningful conversation with your physicians and your surgeons. Do you think that this is the part where people need to understand, at least be monitored first?
Yes, true. Well, okay, first of all, it can be also diagnostic in terms of detecting atrial fibrillation, the device.
Okay.
The iWatch itself, it has the capability of detecting an abnormal heart rhythm, which is an atrial fibrillation. So the ECG on the iWatch, right? It does not detect a heart attack. It detects when the rhythm is abnormal, in particular atrial fibrillation. So it can detect atrial fibrillation, which is extremely good. Yeah, that's one. Second thing is, you're right that it's also a screening tool, because whether you have a very fast atrial fibrillation or a very fast normal heart rate, you will have palpitation. The feeling is palpitation, berdebar. So when you have that feeling, right? So what is it? I mean, if you don't have any wearables, you'll be trying to figure out why are you having this palpitation. So if you have a wearable that can detect, you are able to actually see immediately whether it is a normal rhythm or is atrial fibrillation. So if it's an atrial fibrillation, and that's the first time you're having it, you better go and see your doctor soon, because we know in the West, right, from data from the West, 1 in 5 strokes are caused by atrial fibrillation, and about almost 40% of those that have atrial fibrillation will have a stroke in their lifetime. So that is an early warning, correct? That you said there's an early warning. So if your wearable detects an atrial fibrillation and you have never had it before, there's something to worry about. And but the good thing is that it has detected it, and you should make an appointment to see a heart specialist, to discuss the matter. Because atrial fibrillation, the thing about it is it can be what we call permanent, which means it's there all the time, which obviously you would know, or it can be intermittent. It comes and goes. So that is problem. So when it comes, and if you don't realize it, because when you're in the atrial fibrillation, when you have atrial fibrillation, blood clots can form within the heart, and this can be injected to the brain, causing a stroke. So that's the importance of it.
Just to recap, as we started the show, the Ministry of Health's Medical Device Authority, or MDA, has given regulatory approval for the ECG app to be used in Malaysia for the irregular rhythm notification feature on the Apple Watch 6.
Yes.
And MDA has classified this as a Class B software medical device.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So what does this mean? Does this mean that it's certified by KKM? Is that or
well, what it means that it's just like your BP set at home, right? I mean, if you buy a BP set at home, right?
Yeah.
So you can take the blood pressure with it. So you see the blood pressure, and you know that, say, you have a high blood pressure.
Yeah.
And right. So what do you do with it? So you go and see a doctor and discuss about your findings. Some goes with the atrial fibrillation or the ECG app. It is approved to say that it has detected something, which in this case the rhythm problem, and for you to go and proceed to the next level, because it can't be used as a patient monitoring device all the time. It's not like a hospital heart monitor, because it has got limited capabilities. That's the main difference. So if you're talking about a heart monitor in a hospital setting that has got the full range of activities, then that's different. So this is more like a screening device, if you understand, if you get what I mean.
Completely. Have you been using some of the apps on the wearables? Do you
But
feel?
first of all, I have it. Actually, this is the app. Actually, the ECG app can run from Apple. The iWatch Series 4 onwards, if I'm not mistaken. Mine is a Series 5.
Okay.
Right. So it can. I've been using it, and it's really good. It's cool. And actually, besides the ECG app, before that, it helps monitor your heart rate. Now, I just want, if you don't mind, if you give me a minute or two, just to explain about the heart rate. Okay.
Go ahead. Okay.
Now, there is one thing which is called the resting heart rate, and then there's the maximum heart rate, and then there's a targeted heart rate. Now, not to confuse things, the resting heart rate is obviously when you're at rest. Now, that can range in the range of 50 plus, 55 to up as high as 90, okay, depending on how fit the person is. Usually, the lower the resting heart rate, the fitter the patient is in general, okay, then you have the maximum heart rate. So the maximum heart rate is when you take a number which is 220 minus your age. So that is the maximum heart rate that you should be achieving, when you do exercise or, you're very active. Yeah, so that's your maximum heart rate. And then the targeted heart rate is usually placed between 50 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. So when you exercise, for example, sometimes when you talk to people, they say, hey, do you exercise? Yeah, I walk around a lot, at home, or, I do walks and I go, around the office, I walk a lot. But that does not constitute an exercise because you have not achieved a targeted heart rate. So the targeted heart rate should range between 50 to 80% of what is your maximum heart rate. So that is your target. That is what you should be doing. So when you exercise, you should be going for a targeted heart rate. You should be achieving. Say, for example, if your targeted heart rate is 180, so that you should be trying to go at least 150, 160. So that means that you have now strained your heart enough for it to be actually, to get fitter. Because if you don't reach the targeted heart rate, then, it's just that you're perhaps walking faster, but you have not reached the target. So that it's like an exercise which is not an exercise, so it doesn't do much good anyway.
Okay, completely understand. And I don't know, this is self-soothing, but I am achieving that kind of target heart rate for my daily runs.
Excellent.
Without knowing that I was supposed to do it. You get me, not? I mean, like I'm thinking about
I know.
150. If you use 220 minus 40, about 180. So I'm meeting 150 or 140 BPM. Which brings about my follow-up question, which is Vo2 Max, which is also a feature on some of the wearables like the Apple Watch.
That's right.
So how does the measurement of Vo2 Max tie in with all the other stuff?
Okay, the Vo2 Max looks at endurance, actually. Okay, it looks at the way the body consumes oxygen as it comes into the body, how it consumes oxygen. So that's very important because it's a test of endurance. It measures according to mils per kilos per minute. Basically, when the oxygen goes into your body, right, it will convert ATP. ATP is actually the energy cells or stores that actually makes you feel that when you're active. So the more oxygen you take in, the more that is absorbed, obviously the more energy you have. So that's why we talk that it's an endurance measurement. So when you do your exercises and you key in the data appropriately, then you will have the calculation will then come out with what would be your Vo2 max. So those are two different things, right? Okay, so achieving a targeted heart rate means that you have now achieved what is required for you to actually put a strain on your heart to exercise your heart. And then the next thing is looking at endurance, looking at whether you're fit or not. So Vo2 max looks at your fitness level, basically. Okay, so in general, if you're a male, say you're a semi-active lifestyle, you should be having a Vo2 max maybe about 40 or 40 plus. The high 30s to 40 plus, yeah.
These are the things that we really need to get people to appreciate. It's all about preventive. It's all about screening. And the issue with our culture here, Sani, is that sometimes we'd rather not know about the issues.
Exactly. Ignorance is bliss.
I can. So I think what better time to actually not embrace this particular culture and try to embrace a new culture, which is learn more about your own body. If not the pandemic, then when, right? That's the idea.
So I think just to go back to your issue, perhaps variation in your exercises is important. You could do, say, jogging twice a week, and one of the days you do hits, high intensity, which is more taxing, but that will definitely increase your stamina and endurance. So you may need variation in your exercise, cross training, which is important. But again, I think what you're doing is really much better than most Malaysians, so much better than most Malaysians. Really fantastic, keeping tab on your health and your heart. It's something that because I've been in this business, so managing heart diseases for a long time, and we've seen the trend. When I started training initially, we're looking at patients who are 60s, 70s. Now we're doing bypasses in patients as young as 20s, 30s is common.
Yeah.
Which means that there's the lifestyle change. People are diet itself, they're not exercising, things like that. As a result of that, they're getting all these chronic diseases like diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. Smoking, of course, is another risk, right? And so when you top all that up, you get the disease much earlier. So avoidance of this is very important, and such wearables will certainly help, and will certainly help, especially for your heart health.
Fantastic. I wish I can have you more on this, but well, we have to draw this conversation to a close for now.
Yeah, sure.
It's,
Okay. Anytime.
Thank you. That was Dr. Muhammad Sani Taib, the Senior Consultant Cardiothoracic Surgeon at the National Heart Institute, or IGN. If you've missed any part of this interview, just head on to astroawani.com. Look for Notepad over there, or in this case, look for Apple Watch or IGN or Health. There's plenty of resources there that can help you have a better health lifestyle. Till then, thanks very much for watching, and goodbye.